We're good.
What? All right. What's up, and welcome to the EFIS episode 5. I'm your host, Justin Ledger, here with just Zach Hummel today. Brian Quimby couldn't make it, but we got Zach, so that's good at least. What's up, Zach?
So much, man. Glad to be.
Yeah, I know. It's been, what, like a month now? I mean, because it's bi-weekly, so I think it's been like at least a month, right? Like it was 2 podcasts
Yeah.
ago last time you were on.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the last couple weeks have actually been pretty slow in MLB. We're kind of getting to that time of year where it's kind of we're entering the dog days of summer, sort of. But I mean, we do have the All-Star break coming. We had that Machado Ventura brawl, which we'll get into in a second. Yeah, I mean, that was
I
pretty much.
judge what's going
What were you
on in
saying?
baseball by like fights. I just think there's a lot going on because there's so few
Exactly.
and far between. Whenever there's fights, there's a lot going on in my mind.
Yeah, and I remember that Odor Bautista fight. There was nothing really going on at that time in baseball either, but it seemed like a lot was just because that was such a huge thing. And now it's kind
Yeah.
of part 2 of that with this Machado Ventura one. It's been a slow couple weeks, but when that happened, it was just like it was huge. It was the biggest story. So yeah, we'll just get into that real quick. Yeah, Manny Machado charges the mound against Yordano Ventura. Both of them are hotheads. It was pretty awesome. I've been waiting to see Ventura get punched in the face for a while now, and it finally happened. I'm glad Manny Machado was the guy to do it too. Like seeing a star guy like that, potential AL MVP, charge the mound and do that. That was pretty cool to see. But yeah, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I didn't know Machado was such a hothead. He kind of thought he had a home run, and he kind of, I guess, trotted to first base, and Ventura obviously didn't like that. He takes offense to everything.
Yeah.
Ventura form threw behind him. Machado charged, got a couple. Ventura kind of took him to the ground, and then it was a big pig pile.
Yeah.
On top of the two. I don't know whether guys were trying to get shots in or trying to break it up, or just a mix of the two. The one thing I thought was pretty interesting about it, other than obviously the fight, was usually the catcher, the batter back when they're charging one of their pitchers, but I think Salvador Perez was catching, and he didn't hold Machado back. So that kind of tells me that maybe the Royals are getting kind of sick of this Ventura guy. Perez kind of just let Machado go out and, do whatever he needed to do to Ventura to kind of wake the kid up.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought that was very interesting because every brawl that I've seen, the catcher's there in 2 seconds. But usually the batter doesn't even get a chance to get to the pitcher. But yeah, that was really interesting. I guess one other way you can look at it though is Machado didn't hesitate. Usually the batter kind of just like stands around, stares him down, like waits like before he charges. Machado got hit, and within a millisecond he was charging. So you could kind of look at it in that side too, but Perez definitely could have been quicker to the mound, no doubt about that. But yeah, after Machado got that one punch in, it was like you said, it was a pig pile, and I don't know what happened after that. It was tough to see if anyone else got any punches in. But
yeah, these guys started like Ventura form was just like, and he looked like he had to have the whole team hold him back.
Yeah.
Like he was going to do anything to Machado. He weighs like 170 pounds. Machado would have killed him, I think, if they just let the two brawl.
100% he would have. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of different. I like when Machado's kind of hot-headed and plays in that kind of way. Like last year, we saw him have that little run-in with Donaldson. But when a guy like Ventura, who's struggling this much, I think his ERA is like 5.32 or something like that. He's just not performing up to the standard that the Royals thought he was going to perform. So when the guy's throwing like acting like he's Pedro Martinez on the mound when he's borderline not even an MLB starter, that's something that bugs me, and it bugs Machado, and it probably bugs the entire Royals organization at this point. Another little tidbit that I have to add to the whole Ventura thing. I read that Ventura apparently told the Royals in the clubhouse that he was going to be in Jose Bautista the next time the two faced each other. because obviously those two had that little, or I should say, the Blue Jays and the Royals had that whole brawl last year. With Donaldson was involved. Who else was involved? There were a couple other guys. Edinson Volquez
I
and the
think
Royals.
I think Tulowitzki was involved a little
Tulo
bit.
was, I think. Yeah. And I remember after the game, Ventura said he like went on a Twitter tirade against Jose Bautista in like Spanish tweets, basically like threatening him and saying like I'm going to bean you next time I see you. And I guess recently he told teammates when he faces Bautista again, he's going to hit him. So it's a 3-game set starting July 4th, Royals against the Blue Jays. I'm really interested to see if Ventura still has the balls to do something after this whole ordeal.
Yeah, I don't think he will. I don't think the Royals are going to let him. Maybe they'll against the Blue Jays because he's such a stupid kid. He'll do it and he'll get suspended. Maybe like 20 to 25 games because he has such a history of doing it. But like you said, he has so much talent. They used to call him the little Martinez, next Pedro Martinez, but Pedro would never do that. He would just strike the guy out instead of trying to throw in back of him. Like you said, Ventura's having a terrible season. It's pretty sad. A kid that talented has to up by trying to hit people.
Yeah, and back to your Pedro point. I mean, maybe Pedro would have done it, but Pedro's a guy who has that. I guess you could say he just has that like aura of being Pedro Martinez. He could get away with it. You know what I mean? When you're a guy like Ventura who's not performing well at all, like you don't belong in the major leagues this year, you can't get away with that kind of stuff. You just can't. If his ERA was 2, then okay, fine. You let it slide a little bit, but you're not good. You can't just go out there hitting potential AL MVPs like it's nothing. I think that pretty much covers that topic. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but that was the biggest topic for sure in the past couple weeks.
Well, one thing I was going to say, it seems like the Royals and the Orioles have a little history because they played in the ALCS, I think it was 2 years ago. But the Royals have a history with everyone, so that point is kind of mute at this point. It seems like they're in brawls with everyone at some point.
Yeah, the Royals, I think it's mainly their couple of their pitchers, like Volquez is hot-headed, Ventura is hot-headed. That guy, one of the guys out of their bullpen, I can't think of his name right now, but he's a hothead. It's just like it's their pitchers who like this small group of guys who just gets the Royals in a bunch of shit, and it just seems like they're always in the middle of something. I forgot to mention Ventura last year. It was last year or 2 years ago. Remember when he beamed Brett Lawrie when he was on the A's, and it was that whole situation too. Yeah, so. It's the same guys doing the same thing every year. And I don't think it's the Royals as a whole. I think it's just a few guys, and then the rest of the Royals organization's like, cut the shit. All right, so yeah, that sums that up. We'll move on from that to talk about Giancarlo Stanton. He's having a terrible year. He's batting, as of today's June 12th, he's batting 195. His on-base percentage is 303. I mean, that's not the Giancarlo Stanton. He has 12 home runs, so the power numbers are there, I guess. But when you're batting 195, something's seriously wrong. And that makes me think, like, maybe it's a mental thing, like, because of the whole thing that happened last year when he got drilled in the face and he needed that face mask. I don't know if it's sort of a mental thing he's dealing with right now where he steps up to the plate and it's kind of bothering him, but I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a better hitter than he's now. Like you said, he's hitting terrible, and their hitting coach is Barry Bonds, so I bet he's working tirelessly with Stanton to try to figure it out because this big contract, and now that he's hitting under 200, and his home run numbers, if they're not at the top of the league, he's kind of a liability because he just strikes out. People just throw those sliders low and away, and he chases them. I think he needs to improve his. That's his big issue.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was 2 or 3 days ago. He was making headlines because he had the hardest hit ball ever recorded, and I laughed out loud because I thought it was a homer when I read the headline, and then I clicked the article, and he grounded into a double play. That's all it was.
Yeah,
So that's just the
it could
kind of
be.
Yeah, go
It
ahead.
could be some bad. It could be some bad luck. Well, you hit the ball well, and it just doesn't find the holes. I haven't been watching a ton of Marlins baseball, so I couldn't tell you. But I think his strikeout numbers are. Is he striking out, or is he just putting the ball in play and it's just not finding a hole?
I think it's a combination of both. Honestly, I know he's hitting the ball hard. That's kind of the player that Giancarlo Stanton is. Um, Hitting the ball really hard, or he's striking out. That's kind of he struck out 78 times this year. That's a pretty alarming number considering. I mean, he strikes out a lot usually.
Yeah.
But his batting average typically is above 260. So the fact that it's below the Mendoza line is kind of alarming. But yeah, so Stanton's not having a good year so far. But the Marlins are still managing to be above 500, so I guess that's good for them because if Stanton does start heating up, then you never know if maybe they can make a little noise in the NL East. I doubt it, but they got guys like Marcelo
Yeah.
Zuna, Christian Yelich stepping up. Jose Fernandez is back and he's tearing it up. I don't know if you watched the game last night, but he had a no-hitter going into the sixth, I think, and then he kind of blew it after that. He let up like 5 straight hits, but he still had a great outing, and he's had an unbelievable season so far. So that's encouraging for the Marlins, but they really do need Stan to step up.
Yeah, he needs to start using right field. When he's going opposite field, that's when he's locked in because everyone knows he can, he can take a pitch on the outside corner and pull it for a home run. That's how strong he is. But when he's hitting the ball to right field, hitting home runs to center, that's when, he's locked in. And he's not been doing that during this, down period.
Right, and I fully expect him to heat back up. I think Stan's a guy who you can't keep down for long. I think he's going to figure it out. I think the second half of the season's where we're going to start seeing him get that batting average back up to where it should be. I'll probably say he'd probably be like 240, 250 by the end of the year. I think he's kind of screwed himself over these first couple months, so it probably won't be back up to where it normally is. But the power numbers are still there. It's crazy because he has 37 hits on the season. 12 of those are home runs. So once he gets back in the groove, I think the Marlins will be a lot better. I think they're only 6 games back in the NL East right now, which is kind of crazy. They're still technically in it. If Stanton can heat up and the rest of the guys can just keep doing what they're doing, who knows what could happen the second half of the season. We'll stay in the NL East. Another guy who's struggling, Bryce Harper, had a terrible May. I talked about this a couple weeks ago on the last podcast. He hit 200 in May. That batting average so far in June is back to where it should be. He's batting .313 so far in June. But the power numbers, he's sort of having a power outage. He only hit 4 homers in May, and he hasn't hit any homers so far in June. That's very unlike Bryce Harper.
Yeah, he's definitely been struggling. But again, as you said with Giancarlo Stanton, the Marlins have been playing pretty well. The Nationals have increased their lead during this streak that he's been on. But I've never really liked Bryce Harper's swing. So when he gets into these lulls where he hits under 200, it doesn't really surprise me, to be honest, because the way he cocks back and pushes everything forward, I feel like any off-speed pitch could get him out. The fact that he does have such a good average shows how great of a player he is.
Yeah, I said this a couple weeks ago too. I thought it's pretty intriguing how ever since the Cubs had that approach to him to pitch around him and sort of just basically not allow him to hit the ball, they approached him in a way it was either intentional walk or just walk him, I guess, unintentionally, but just still like might as well have been intentional, in other words. Ever since then is when he's had this sort of, I guess you could say, slump, and I don't know if maybe it's kind of mental for him too, where it's like he doesn't know how pitchers are going to approach him. Are they going to pitch around him? Are they going to pitch like to him? I think for Harper, it's probably mental too.
Yeah, that'll get in your head when you get intentionally walked. Like, I don't want to brag, but it's kind of a brag. I used to get intentionally walked in little league all the time, and then used to start chasing pitches because you just want to hit. That's baseball is kind of boring. When you're out in the field, the hitting is your chance to shine and do something. And Harper definitely, MVP is trying to make his case, so he's definitely probably chasing pitches that you shouldn't be swinging at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Harper's kind of been off the radar, I guess you could say. I haven't heard much about him because of this slump. And a guy who's kind of overtaking him in the NL is Nolan Arenado. I think Nolan Arenado, he's leading I think he's leading the MLB actually in home runs with 19. I could be wrong about that. It might just be the National League. But he has 19 homers at the moment. I think he's leading the league in RBIs. He's tearing it up for the Rockies, who have one of the most dynamic lineups in the MLB. Unfortunately, they don't have any pitching. They have one guy in Tyler Chatwood, who most people don't even know who that is, who's pitching well for them. The rest of their rotation's very shaky. He had that big blow-up in the dugout against the Padres a little over a week ago when Matt Kemp hit a 3-run homer and Arenado just went nuts on the entire team in the dugout. And that's kind of the first time we've seen Arenado show any sort of emotion. Usually he's a guy who stays kind of quiet. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he has showed emotion before, but the Rockies are so far off the radar when it comes to in the MLB compared to other teams that maybe I haven't seen it. But yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting because Arenado's clearly sick of losing, and it doesn't look like the Rockies are going to be a winning competitive team anytime soon. So I wrote this article yesterday about how Nolan Arenado should be traded to a team like the Mets. Someone like that who's going to need a third baseman, some guy to put in the middle of the lineup soon. I think he'd be the perfect fit there, and obviously the Mets would be giving pitching back to the Rockies. I thought that was an interesting idea and something that could happen in the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, Arenado is a free agent after this year, and him and the Rockies, they haven't reached an extension yet on his contract. So, if the Rockies start going downhill, which it looks like they are because they always do, they might try to shop Arenado around during the trade deadline. And then maybe a team like the Mets, like you said, comes in. They have a bevy of pitching, but, they're hitting, lacks power, and Arenado would definitely bring that. But like you said, he's actually second in MLB to Trumbo in home runs, second in RBIs to Big Papi. He definitely is an under-the-radar player, but I love the way he plays. He plays really hard, even if he's not vocal, like you said. And this blow-up he had at Nick Hundley, I'm not sure what it was over the home run. Maybe it was pitch selection or something. But
yeah, he threw him a first-pitch fastball, which to Matt Kemp sometimes just isn't a good idea. I think Arenado noticed it and just kind of freaked out. Probably reached his breaking point, I guess. And considering the fact that the Rockies are, they're sliding in the standings again, I think he's just tired of it.
Yeah, the Rockies seem to never have pitching, no matter if they're good or bad. Even when they were good, they were in the World Series with the Red Sox. They were throwing out Jeff Francis and shitty-ass pitchers. So, they definitely play the offensive game in that ballpark. They can score with anyone else, but their pitching definitely lacks it. And Arenado is probably playing third and just, constantly having to look over his head at home runs. Eventually, that will drain a player. And I think he'll be gone, whether he gets traded or, test free agency, because I don't think he wants to stay in Colorado, even though it definitely inflates his numbers probably a little bit.
Yeah, well, actually, that's the interesting thing because Arenado's splits are pretty even when it comes to home and home versus on the road, which shows that he's not a product of Coors Field. He's a legitimate player. I think if he went to the Mets or someone like that, I'm using the Mets as my primary example because I just think he's the perfect fit in that organization. Obviously, David Wright, their captain and their normal third baseman, just got hurt. I feel like that just sort of signals that they need a guy to take over for Wright in that on that team and kind of be a leader. And I think that would give Arenado a perfect opportunity to step in and be that guy. And I also think it would put him on a huge stage compared to what he's on right now in Colorado. And not only is that what Arenado needs, but that's what the sport needs. They need a guy like that who can be on that national stage, on the Mets in the NL East, facing Bryce Harper, battling for that title of who's the best player in the National League. And I think that would just be perfect all around for everyone involved. The Rockies would probably get a guy like I don't want to throw Syndergaard's name out there because maybe the Mets wouldn't want to part ways with Syndergaard, but that's something that should be at least considered when you're getting a guy like Arenado in return,
Yeah. likable guy. Like you said, he's in Colorado, so we don't get to see much of him. But I do check a lot of Rockies games because my favorite player is on their team, and he's about the only player that's helping Arenado, try to win games. But another team I think would be a good fit for Arenado, who also have a lot of pitching, is maybe the Indians. They're maybe one bat away from being a really good team, and they have 3 or 4 starters that have good potential. Carrasco, Salazar, Kluber obviously is their stud. So maybe that's a team as well. But the Mets would also be a good location. I'm not sure if they'd be willing to give up Syndergaard, but maybe one of their other pitchers.
Maybe
Harvey.
I was thinking maybe if they don't give one of their big 3 guys like Harvey, Syndergaard, or DeGrom, then maybe they package Steven Matz or like Zach Wheeler with other prospects. But yeah. I think it would just take a lot for the Rockies to part ways with a guy like Arenado, who right now is clearly the face of their franchise. I think that would be tough. I think it would be toughest for the Rockies. Out of everyone involved, I think the Rockies would have the hardest time parting ways. But I think that's just a move they have to make. This philosophy of having a stacked lineup and no pitching isn't working. They have to change that up, and if they want to contend, it's just clear at this point. Obviously, the exceptions to that are 2007 when they were in the World Series, and they, like you said, their ace was Jeff Francis, who I think had an ERA above 4 that year. And then 2009 when they had I think they were like 92 and 70 that year, and still no pitching. But I mean, just ask a guy like Troy Tulowitzki how this philosophy works out for the Rockies. It doesn't work. So I think it would be in their best interest to part ways with Arenado, as tough as that might be for them. I think it would just pay off to have that guy every 5th day who you can count on. But yeah, that pretty much sums that up. And then since we're on the same, we're still on the Rockies, we'll talk about your boy Trevor Story, who you briefly mentioned there as your favorite player. I'll admit it. He's proven me wrong so far this season. He's second in I believe he's second in NL All-Star voting behind Addison Russell at short. He's batting .265. On base percentage is a little low. It's .317. He doesn't walk much at all. I think he only has 18 walks on the season. But that slugging percentage is right up there at .551. He's got 16 homers, 42 RBIs. He needs to lower the strikeout numbers. He's got 89 strikeouts, but I guess that just kind of at this point comes with the territory when it comes to Trevor Story. But I'll let you go off about your guy.
Yeah, I mean, you're naming all these stats, being very nitpicky of one of the best players in the league. Maybe the Rockies can trade Arenado because they have another face of the franchise in Trevor Story. And what I've really been realizing lately is he's an A-plus defensive shortstop. He makes a play or two every night that a lot of other shortstops in the league wouldn't make. And if you can get power at the shortstop position, he's on pace to hit, I don't know, probably 30 to 40 home runs. You got to sign up for that every day. And with his youth, the Rockies have to really make a decision whether they want to. Arenado is going to get so much money as a free agent contract because you mentioned earlier. So they have to decide whether they want Story or Arenado because I don't really think they can pay both. They're both going to, get so much money on the free market. And as you mentioned, Colorado is not the ideal location the way they just haven't won. And Story and Arenado both seem like, grit guys. They want to win. They'll do whatever it takes to win. And, that's pretty much all I got. He's a great player. I just can't wait to see him, in the All-Star game. Hopefully he makes it because I don't think a lot of people know about him because he had that real great run at the beginning of the season when he hit all those home runs, and it was kind of a novelty at first, but then I kept watching him, and he's a joy to watch.
He is fun to watch for sure. And I think it's encouraging that his batting average isn't – because I remember in one of our podcasts I was like, end of the year he's going to be hitting like 220. I think I'm wrong about that. I'll admit it. I think he'll keep this going. I think he'll probably hit around like 250, 260 by the end of the year. And if those power numbers are up, then yeah, you're right. I think that's a guy you got to keep in your squad. You got to pay him. He's like I said, he has to cut down on the strikeouts, but he is a rookie. So I think maybe with a year under his belt, maybe next year he cuts down on those numbers, maybe increases his his walk rate too. But yeah, that left side of the infield in Colorado is fantastic with Arenado and Story. Like you said, in the future, I don't know if those two can coexist. It's kind of a tough situation in Colorado, but like I said, I think you gotta sacrifice some of your offense in order to get some pitching and really start contending in the NL West.
Yeah, the NL West is pretty weak. I mean, the Giants are pretty good, but the Red Sox went in there and kind of, showed that they're not that great. I mean, the Red Sox are all right, but the Dodgers so inconsistent other than Kershaw. If you can get a couple arms in Colorado, because they can definitely score with anyone, they can compete with Story and Arenado if they decide to keep both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not even just those guys in that lineup who are great. I mean, you got LeMahieu, you got Cargo, Charlie Blackmon. That lineup is very talented and very under the radar. They deserve a lot more recognition than they get. They're 5th in runs scored, I believe, on the season. So, I mean, that speaks for itself, especially as a losing team, just to see that a team has that many runs, but just still sub 500 record. They're definitely, for me at least, they're probably the most intriguing team in the entire league. They every year to year, they just blow my mind the way that they score so many runs and still manage to lose so many games.
Yeah, they're over for if people are betting, their over-unders are like 10 and 11, no matter who's pitching. So that kind of shows you how crazy it is when the normal is kind of like 8.5 or 7.5. So, like you said, their offense is great, but they definitely need some more pitching if they want to ever, take that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. Since most people listening to this are probably Red Sox fans, we'll move on to a little bit of Red Sox talk to wrap this up. Since the last time we've been on the podcast, the Red Sox offense has been unbelievable. From top to bottom, Mookie Betts, Dustin Pedroia has been fantastic. Xander Bogaerts, David Ortiz, Jackie Bradley Jr. Everyone, it seems like everybody is performing in that lineup. It's kind of a similar situation, maybe not to the extreme that the Rockies have, but it's a similar situation with the Red Sox where their lineup is performing really well, but their pitching not so much. It's a little shaky. David Price is starting to figure it out a little bit. He's not quite where we want him to be at yet, but he's starting to figure it out. Stephen Wright has been awesome. I can't wait to see him on the All-Star team. I really hope that he makes an appearance there. He deserves it.
Yeah.
Who else? I mean, everyone else. Eduardo Rodriguez had a little bit of a shaky start the other day, but I'm glad that he's back because I expect a lot. I expect big things out of him too. Other than that, no one's really that encouraging on the Red Sox pitching staff, which is kind of upsetting because I thought this would be a year where people bounce back like Porcello. We saw at the beginning of the season him performing really well through his first few starts, and now he's showing signs of the Porcello we saw last year, which is pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, Bogaerts, in this little streak since the last podcast, his average is ridiculous.
I think it's like 360 or something like that. It's insane.
He gets so many, now the power's starting to pick up because we always heard that he was going to be like a 20 home run guy, and we didn't really see it at the beginning of the season, but I think he's hit 2 or 3 home runs in this series in Minnesota. And they scored 15 runs the other night. And like you said, the pitching staff hasn't been great, but literally if they go 6 innings and give up 4 runs, I still like our chances because our bullpen's been great. Robbie Ross has been a good surprise. I have always hated him, but he's been pretty good this season.
Yep.
Yeah, Matt Barnes has been all right. Kimbrel at the end, Uehara, Tazawa. I actually like our bullpen a little bit, but as long as our pitchers can get a quality start, I think it's a tough game for us to lose when the other team's only putting up 4 to 5 runs. But they'll definitely need to get an arm at the trade deadline. They have the prospects to go get someone. I'm just not sure who's available yet because there's still a lot of teams, still in the race. We'll see coming up.
Yeah, that's tough. You're right. They do need a guy at the deadline. We said that last year too, and of course it didn't happen, unfortunately. But we need that. The Red Sox need that guy who they can plug in. Right, we can't rely on Stephen Wright all season. We just can't. He's not a guy we can rely on all year to be our number 2 guy, a reliable number 2 guy heading into the playoffs. they're going to need to move someone at the deadline for solid number two if they are to contend through October. I think the Red Sox are kind of I can't place my finger on what I think of the Red Sox heading into the second half of the season. I mean they're a first place team right now. They're tied with the Orioles for first place. I don't think the Orioles are going to be contending with them all season. I think they're going to slow down. I don't think they have enough talent to stay in it, especially pitching wise. But the Red Sox, I can't decide if they're going to keep this offensive performance throughout the entire season. I feel like they're going to have little slumps where their lineup isn't performing up to what they should. And obviously, while we're on the lineup topic, Hanley Ramirez has not been doing anything, and this lineup is still scoring at will. So maybe that's an encouraging sign. Maybe Hanley will figure it out, get his power numbers back. But second half of the season, we're going to have to see a more well-rounded team. They're not going to survive being an offensive team with no pitching like we were just talking about with the Rockies.
Yeah, I think, Red Sox fans, they're usually a cynical bunch, but I think we have to look at the standings in the AL. There's a lot of dog shit in the AL. The Red Sox, to me, are the top team. If they can get one more arm, I would – if they get a second starter, I honestly think they're the favorite to make the World Series out of the AL because I just think their best players are their young players. So that makes me think they won't have these slumps that maybe an older team would have. The Royals right now are going through a little bit of a slump. They're almost back to 500. And their pitching's great usually. So Hanley Ramirez, I've always hated him. And at the beginning of the season, he's playing first. He's changed his act around. He's still joking around. But when the team's winning, that kind of solves everything. I would not mind them trading him in the offseason, no matter what happens this season. I think this is the highest his value is going to get because I think next couple of years it could be downhill really quickly, as we saw with Sandoval. And we have Sam Travis, who tore his I think he tore his ACL. He's a great first base prospect. So, I would love to see him come up and play next year because the Red Sox, they are in one of the best spots of any team in the MLB just with their, Bradley, Betts, Pedroia at the end of his career, but you need that veteran leadership. Ortiz on the way out. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really exciting second half of the season. And finally, after all these last place finishes, we're actually going to have something to watch, going in to the end of the season.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with your Hanley Ramirez point. I think if he keeps this attitude up, especially, I'm loving what I'm seeing out of him. He's not looking like that lazy player we saw in left field last season. We're seeing more of an energetic, almost like a leader this year. That's good to see. And I think end of the season, his value will be 1,000,000 times higher than it was this past offseason. So you got to take advantage of that. But yeah, I think it's going to be Red Sox, Blue Jays at the top of the AL East still. I don't believe in the Orioles. I think Blue Jays are going to – I mean, they already were starting to heat up, so I think we're starting to see them figure it out. And I think it's going to be a battle come September between the Red Sox and Blue Jays. I said that beginning of the season too. I just think that's how the AL East is destined to go. And then meanwhile, the Yankees and Rays are actually still kind of in it, but I think they're going to falter. They're not going to last all season long. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I have to say about the Red Sox. Their offense has been amazing, and they need a number two guy. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, one last thing to keep an eye on with the new GM, Dombrowski. When he was with the Tigers, he was not afraid to trade big names, big prospects at the deadline. He traded Cespedes from the Tigers to the Mets. He traded David Price from the Tigers to the Blue Jays. So this guy is not scared to make a big deal at the deadline. So that kind of leaves me optimistic. Like last year, we wanted them to go get a starter, and they didn't. But I think this year with Dombrowski, they'll go get someone pretty good.
I think he realizes they have to. If they're going to compete, they have to have a number two guy. You can't just have Price, especially with his history in the postseason. You can't just have Price and no one else. The Blue Jays figured that out last year the hard way, and I don't think Dombrowski's going to make that same mistake.
Yeah, it's a great change. I actually love the Dombrowski hire because he knows that you have to make these deals to win in baseball. Even if it's first season and he makes a deal that ends up winning the Red Sox World Series, he'll never buy a beer in the city of Boston again. So that'd be great.
Yeah, I completely agree. So that wraps this episode of the EFIS up. Be sure to follow Ledge Radio on Twitter. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode. Make sure you tune in next Sunday for episode 2 of our new podcast, Anything Goes. We're calling it the most random podcast on the internet. We just talk about anything and everything. I think you guys will like it because it's a break from sports. It's kind of a comedic podcast. So definitely tune into that. And we will see you guys later.
Yep. See you guys.